Okay, so it's a little windy. I'm not sure if you guys can hear me. I do have my new mic on with the wind protector, but it is very excessive wind, so I don't know if it'll be sufficient. Tonight is my graduation, got by the title and everything. We don't have it in person because Ontario is still basically locked down. I don't have my diploma yet, so I'm using my grade 8 grad diploma since it's in a black case. My high school one was in a blue one, so using this, we're gonna go take some pictures and hopefully some of them will turn out.
For the Faculty of Science. Today is an exciting day. I know we all wish we could be here in person, but as we've learned together over the past year and a half, virtual gatherings can nonetheless be meaningful and profound, as I'm certain today's will be.
Georgia Janice McDonough.
Woo!
Jennifer Michelle Victoria Catherine Joan Sherl.
Cheers! Congratulations!
I just bought this candle at Michael's for 60% off, so I'm gonna light it for the video. Okay, so I just wanted to sit down and talk a little bit. I made a few notes. I actually graduated last night, though I still don't have my diploma since they're mailing it. We couldn't have a ceremony because Ontario was in lockdown, so that's kind of what I wanted to talk about today. Grad just doesn't feel real. Maybe it wouldn't even feel real if we had a ceremony and walked across the stage, but then at least there you would have a cap and gown and your diploma, and it'd just be a way different experience. So it just hasn't hit me that I've graduated, I'm done. So let's talk about my university experience. I just had a couple points I want to talk about today, and then I will talk more about my experience in some other videos. So I want to start by I'm so thankful for my family. They made the best of the situation that we had. My mom and my sister decorated everything. My sister and I took a bunch of pictures, and we definitely had fun, and they made it the best that they could for, again, the situation. So just because I'm oh, it doesn't feel real or something doesn't mean that I'm not grateful for what I did get to experience. So quick little background, our school, so in Ontario we're in lockdown. They've just opened up so that you can have 10 people gather outside. So there's no possible way we would have a graduation. They didn't have one last year because we were right at the start of COVID, and there wasn't one this year. So they just did a YouTube live stream where they read a list of the graduates. They didn't even allow us to send in pictures or anything, and it was just they read my name, Tori Charles, and moved on. So that's a little depressing. It just felt like they could have done a lot more effort. They didn't even send us our diplomas yet. I know some of the other schools got little welcome to being an alumni package, or just some other stuff. They got their caps and like their diplomas and stuff like before their like little ceremony, so just at least in that sense you've got something, and like I just feel like we got like nothing. Okay, so if I could give somebody going into university one piece of advice, it would be take care of yourself, and grades aren't everything. So this kind of depends on what you want to do. Like if you want to go into med school or law school, grades are going to mean a whole lot more than if you want to pursue something like research. I was in French immersion. English is my first language, and I went to a French immersion elementary school and high school. But as the years went on, the amount of French kind of dropped off. So like my grade 12 year, I only had one class in French. But I decided to pursue university in my second language, which I know there's a lot of people that do pursue it in English, which is their second language. So I decided to go to uOttawa specifically for that. And I did my program in French, or a lot of it in French. This was so hard. I definitely got better over the years, but my first year, like the class, I took my first year biology class in French. I could not tell you anything I learned in that class. I could understand my teachers in high school, but they're all people that speak French as a second language. Now my professors that were talking in French, they're from Quebec. French is their first language. And it was very, very overwhelming. Not to mention, I never had visited uOttawa. I had never even been east of Toronto until I moved in. It was so overwhelming. I didn't know anything. I didn't know any of the policies at school. I didn't know you could drop classes, which would have been huge. I didn't know you could not follow the schedule. So they give you like your course outline, like, oh, take this set of classes your first semester, and this set of classes like second semester, and then this year and that year. I didn't know that you didn't have to follow that. And so I packed in, I followed their one advice of like, oh, take this one French class to help you with this class. I found it did absolutely nothing. It was a lot of extra work. I had over 30 hours of class, like class alone. For physics, I had 9 hours of class. I had a 3-hour lab, 3-hour lectures each week, an hour and a half tutorial, and an hour and a half DGD. My friends that I met in social sciences had 5 classes, 3 hours each. They had 15 hours of class a week. I had 9 hours for one class. So that's a huge disadvantage. Like, so it's really hard. Like, one of the points I wanted to say is like, don't compare yourself to somebody else. Like, even if they're in the same program, it's significantly different. Some of my friends did part-time classes as they went along. So they only did 3 or 4 classes, whereas I took 5 or 6 classes in a semester because I wanted to like graduate on time. But there are so many people that take an extra semester or an extra year, and and somebody who might be getting like all straight A's, they might only have 3 classes that they need to focus on, or maybe they took a bunch of easier classes in one semester. So just because somebody else may seem like they're in the same program, or like somebody else is doing better than you, it is not all the same. Like, no one has the same experience. Like, there's people that are going to school full-time and working full-time, and so of course they're not going to have the grades that the people that only have 3 classes and only have to worry about 3 classes. So it's really like, and even programs within faculties, so like biology has a lot more labs, but biomed is set up so that you get high grades to get into med school, whereas biology is focused on like research and lab work, so we have a lot more class time. And even the students that are like in the same classes are getting better grades than me, but again, they don't have the same workload that I do. They don't have any labs, they didn't have any like other work in like some of the semesters, so it's not the same. And honestly, it doesn't matter. Like, so I kind of wanted to go into like my next thing, like what am I doing next? So I'm actually studying my master's in September for biology. And I got this opportunity not because I had the highest grades, but because I was passionate about what I wanted to do. So like the beginning of my like university career, like I never went to office hours. I didn't really know my profs. I was in huge classes. And then I started to realize that like my classes taught in French had smaller classes, and I did a lot better in those classes. I realized in the end that I spent more time on the classes that were taught in French, so I actually ended up learning more and doing better in those classes once I eventually understood what the profs were saying. But I had to go through that like such a struggle in first year, and it just got easier from that. And now, like, if I could go back and change something, I would have taken more classes in French my first year. I was like, oh, I'm just gonna take my 2 minimum classes in French, move on. But that actually was so much harder. I was not around the French enough. The more I was around French, the more time I spent in French classes and talking to people in French, the more it came to me, the more easy it came to me. And I definitely would have done calc in French and chemistry in French like my first year, and I feel like that would have been so much better. But again, like, you can't go back and change that. It's just about like what you do going forward. So my first year, I'll talk about this like a lot in another video, like my study tips and stuff, but I was on academic probation like my first probably year. I worked my butt off to get that like my grades up, and every semester since I had a higher grade, and a lot of that was because I had 6 classes over 30 hours. I was in a new city. I had absolutely no idea. I didn't have a good like roommate situation, so I didn't sleep as much as I like would have liked to. I didn't have a good place to like study. I didn't really know how to study. I had breezed through high school. Like, I had all A's in high school and I barely studied, so I never learned how to properly study or how to efficiently study. And I didn't really like socialize a ton. Like, I had my friends, but we constantly studied. We would spend like hours and hours. Like, I would wake up, go to class at 8:30. Mondays, I think I had class from like 10 in the morning to 7 p.m. at night, not a single break. And then I would have 3 weekly assignments. I have 3 labs that had like lab work to do plus my exams, and it was extremely overwhelming. But eventually I did learn how to like balance my time. Like, first year was extremely overwhelming. Like, I constantly was like studying and working, and I was just getting nowhere. But eventually it did get easier, and I got my grades up, and I went from being on academic probation to getting straight A's. So it's definitely possible. It doesn't matter if you have a rough semester, or honestly even a rough year or 2. Like, you can get back from it, and it doesn't matter. So I'll talk briefly about how I got to continuing on to do my master's. So when COVID hit, all of our classes were online. I mean, same for pretty much everyone. And then almost all of my 4th year was online. The only thing I had in person was like my research project was technically, even though I did it all on my own, and then I had one lab that was in person, but everything else was online. So I took a plant class first semester of my 4th year, and I had 7 people in my class. That was smaller because COVID. There's people that were like taking gap years and things like that, and also it was taught in French, so it was already going to be a small class to begin with, but there were 7 of us. So the first week our prof wanted to meet with us individually, so we signed up for a time, met with our prof, and he just wanted to know like have an idea, like, what are we interested in, why did we take this class, what we wanted to pursue after university. And I'd had him previously for like as a lab coordinator in the past, I think for like 2 of my labs, but I didn't really know who he was. And then he asked like, oh, what do you want to do after you're done, since it's your last year? And I was like, I don't know, maybe research. And he's like, oh, well, like, what interests you? And I was like, I kind of like a variety of things. Like, I don't really know what path I want to do. I was like, I like genetics, but I don't want to be a geneticist. Like, I don't want to pursue something in genetics. I like medicine and that idea, but I don't want to go to med school. Like, I don't want to be a doctor. And then I like plants, but I don't want to be a botanist. So I'm like, I'm not sure how to like combine this into something that I'd like. And I said, the one thing that I have kind of considered, or like the area that interests me, is the like biochemistry aspect of plants. So like not plant defenses and not like the physical aspect of the plant, or like plant life, I guess, but more so how plants can be used as medicine. So like studying the medicinal properties of plants. And so when I said that, he was like, oh, have you heard of such and such lab? Like, actually, yeah, I have heard someone, but I was like, I didn't want to contact him. I was like, that's too terrifying. Like, they're not gonna like, he's not gonna like let me like work in his lab. And he's like, oh, well, he's like a friend of mine. So my prof actually ended up speaking with this other my will-be supervisor for my master's, and I like wrote an email to him. I was honestly terrified. I spent probably a couple hours writing like a couple paragraphs for this this email, and I was just like, I'm super interested in what you do. Is there any way that you would consider being a co-supervisor for a research project? And this is in September. Most people that are doing research projects had their supervisors lined up for months. Like, people in third year start looking for them, and I was like, oh, like, no one's gonna accept me, like, my grades aren't the best, like, I'm not gonna bother, like, that's too terrifying, I don't know any profs, I don't really know what I want to do. And a few days later, he responds to me and said, I would love to have you as a research student, and we went from there. So then I had both of the profs, so the one that I had for my plant class and then the one for the lab that I was really interested in, both of them agreed to be my co-supervisors, and I worked on essentially an independent research project. They call them an honors research project. And then at one of our lab meetings, he mentioned, like, my one supervisor mentioned that he was looking for a master's, like a couple master's students, and I was like, oh, maybe I could get in. Like, I somehow managed to get here, so why not try for that? So I emailed him and said, hey, like, you mentioned you were looking for a master's student. This is something I'm very interested in, like, pursuing, like, what we do in our lab. And we met and talked, well, it was like video chatting, and he offered me a spot. So I ended up getting then accepted for a master's, and then so that was back in March, I believe. And then at the end of April, I did my final poster presentation for my independent research project, so my honors thesis. And then me and the couple other undergrads in my lab actually got the opportunity to submit our research to an actual conference, like a professional conference. So my abstract was then published in the conference, and I had recorded a 10-minute presentation for this conference. And honestly, I was terrified because it's one thing to present in front of teachers and, like, getting graded and getting graded is terrifying in itself, but presenting my actual contribution to the scientific community in front of people that have masters and PhDs in this specific subject, and that was terrifying. But here we are now, fast forward now, and I managed to get through all of that, and I started my university with, like, just happy that I passed classes. Like, I never failed a class, but, like, there were times that I came very close, and I still managed to end up here. So grades really don't matter in the grand scheme of things. I found out after I got accepted for my undergrad research that he had actually turned away previous students that are, like, that had, like, straight A's all throughout their whole university, but they just wanted to do a project because it would look good on their med school application. Whereas, like, from my understanding, it was because I genuinely had a passion and, like, that's what I wanted to do. Like, it was, our entire lab is based around secondary metabolites of plants and, like, things related to that. So, like, cannabis and, like, how it can be used in, like, a therapeutic aspect, and, like, the metabolism of it, and it's exactly, like, everything that I love comes into one. Like, even in my thesis, like, there was a genetics section. Like, it literally was everything I liked in one thing. So now I'm going to start my master's in September. I haven't exactly decided on my topic. I've been kind of trying to narrow that down, but I will continue to make videos on that. And I think that was kind of it. I had a couple other points, but I think I'll save them for another video because this is actually getting really long. But if you made it to the end, I hope you guys enjoyed, and don't forget to subscribe and like this video. If you have any back to school video requests or any video requests in general, let me know and I would love to add them to my list. I have a bunch more content coming in the coming weeks. I have a bunch filmed. I just need to, like, edit it all together. But I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will talk to you all next time with another video. Bye!